can see in even the redacted version of Mueller's report. And I mean, this Corey Lewandowski mishegas, this is only one of the alleged incidents of obstruction of justice by the president that is spelled out in totally plain language in Mueller's report. There's a whole bunch of incriminating incidents that are described in as much detail, with as much damning evidentiary and legal support, and as much clarity from Mueller on how the president's acts meet every legal element of obstruction of justice. It's not just this Corey Lewandowski one. There's a whole bunch of them. Don't take it from me. This is actually a pretty good summary.
What do we do if the president commits a crime? Do we let him get away with it? The crime is not a difficult one to understand. Obstruction of justice, the statute making obstruction criminal, prohibits interfering or attempting to interfere with a criminal prosecution or an investigation that the government's conducting. So when Bob Mueller said the President of the United States did about a dozen things to slow down, impede, negate, or interfere with the investigation of his campaign or of his former national security advisor, General Michael Flynn, that's a serious allegation of criminal activity. So when the president asked his former advisor and my former colleague at Fox, K.T. McFarland, to write an untruthful letter to the file knowing the government would subpoena it, that's obstruction of justice. When the president asked Corey Lewandowski, his former campaign manager, to get Mueller fired, that's obstruction of justice. When the president asked his then White House counsel to get Mueller fired and then lie about it, that's obstruction of justice. When he asked Don McGahn to go back to the special counsel and change his testimony, that's obstruction of justice. When he dangled a pardon in front of Michael Cohen in order to keep Cohen from testifying against him, that's obstruction of justice.
Yeah, I told you there were more examples. It's a good list. That is Andrew Napolitano, who's a former state court judge in New Jersey. He is now the chief legal analyst on the Fox News channel. And his take on the implications of the Mueller report, both in terms of the president and in terms of how Attorney General William Barr handled this, it's not unlike what you may have been hearing in legal circles for the past week since Mueller's redacted report was released, but it's definitely unlike what this president and this administration have gotten used to hearing about themselves on Fox News.
Why not charge him? Because the Attorney General of the United States would have blocked such a charge. Because the Attorney General of the United States is of the view that obstruction of justice can only occur if you're interfering with a criminal investigation of yourself. But that's not what the obstruction statute says, and that's not what law enforcement believes, and that's not what prosecutors do. Prosecutors prosecute people who interfere with government functions. That's what the president did by obstruction. Where's this going to end? We don't know. If he had ordered his aides to violate federal law, to save a human life, or to preserve human freedom, he would at least have a moral defense to his behavior. But ordering them to break federal law to save him from the consequences of his own behavior, that is immoral, that is criminal, that is defenseless, and that is condemnable.
And that is the Fox News channel, which might explain why Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein gave a super defensive speech last night in New York City, declaring that everything that went wrong here happened before he got there, and none of it can be blamed on him. It may explain why the president himself is trying this incredibly risky gambit of trying to block all testimony by people who served as witnesses for Mueller, including his own White House counsel. It may also be part of the heat that Attorney General William Barr appears to be feeling, at least as evidenced by the anonymous sources popping up in the news, bearing blind quotes about how totally reasonable all of William Barr's decisions have been here, despite all visible evidence to the contrary. William Barr will be testifying in open session in the Senate on Wednesday and in open session in the House on Thursday, which means over the weekend, I will bet you dollars to donuts that we will get more blind quotes from anonymous officials talking about, really, if you think about it, how reasonable William Barr really has been in this whole process, despite what you might have heard. And actually, really, if you think about it, he's kind of the hero of the story, isn't he? Honestly, though, given Barr's performance when it comes to handling Mueller's findings thus far, in this week since we've been able to see him, why is Congress bothering to hear from him at all? Haven't we sort of heard from William Barr? Haven't we sort of got a sense from of where William Barr is coming from on all this and how he fits into this process? I mean, I'd be happy to just stick with anonymous officials describing William Barr's take on things. Why don't they just bring in Mueller instead? Why are they bringing in Barr next week? And what's the wait to getting Mueller to testify? Tick-tock. Lots to come tonight. Stay with us.